what we were discussing last time was the swing of the wall. With the swing of the wall, it's a problem. It's not a good wall. And we have to look more into the halacha about how much this is, how much swaying would be a problem. Let's see if we have any.
But I think they came to different conclusions. The conclusion that because people sway.
But that was the Gemara's question. The Gemara's questioning that opinion. What's happening here in the Gemara is the Gemara has been challenging the opinion. The opinion stated, if you have a wall that is not able to withstand the normal wind, and Rashi identifies, what does that mean? It's not able to withstand the normal wind. That means a wind comes and the wall of the sukkah goes this way and goes that way. It sways. Now Rashi did not identify how much swaying would be the problem. The more lenient opinion would seem to be have up to 3 tvachim. If it sways less, and it would be strict on the size of 3 tvachim, if it sways less than 9 inches, there are opinions to rely on that's not considered a significant amount of swaying. That would be the more lenient opinion. But we'd have to look into. I think someone quoted that you have up to a tefach, up to 3 to 4 inches of swaying. And I mean the language of Rashi is vague. He just says if it moves. Does it mean any amount? I mean, if that really called moving? If something that's very insignificant might not be considered really moving, but it's not clear in the language of Rashi. Then it has to be researched exactly how much swaying you're allowed on the wall. So when you make a sturdy sukkah, you don't have the problem. You make real walls. The issue is when you make a canvas sukkah, when you have these cloth sukkah. So these cloth sukkah, you see, a lot of times they set up by a pizza shop. They set up these sukkahs that are cloth, and you have to tell the people they need to tie it down very well, because what did you say, Mr. Haber? Because if they don't tie it down well, so Mr. Bitesh, we're talking about the importance that the walls of a sukkah, if you're not making it, if you're making it with these type of canvas stuff, whatever, you have to make sure that they should be tied down very well. There shouldn't really be. There was a time because that was the most simplest. Because you took this canvas cloth, whatever it is, put the poles and you put it around it, and that was it. That was the most simplest way to do it, and it would sway. So the question was, how much swaying are they allowed? If they said, did it sway up to 9 inches? Or there was 9 inches? It's a. I would think that the people who put up the sukkah were told to tie it down as best as they can. I presume that would be the simplest instruction, to tie it down, that it should not sway. But you're not sure if that was something that was emphasized. You might not be able to. Okay. So now, today, people know that. Now people have become more educated. The community has learned what? But they don't use canvas for a private home. But when you deal with a restaurant, a store, pizza shop, it's very common because that's the easiest thing to put up. So he was in Brooklyn, Mr. Matesh was in Brooklyn, and they had this, the canvas sukkah. And now the question was, did they do it the way it's supposed to be done? That it should, what? Some other material that easy to put up, very simple to put up. Yes.
You're outside the columns. Again,
So I have to look at the sukkah upstairs, but there are parts that are not under schach. They're not under. If you're not under the bamboo or the mats.
Columns are like 6 columns on the inside, and there's stop past the column.
I'm saying I have to look at it to see exactly, but I would just think make sure that you're under the part that has look up the schach, because if they put schach there, that means that has to be a kosher spot. And right when you walk outside on the porch, the overhead is glass. It's a glass overhead, And that glass overhead is not called, you can't stand there and eat there. You can't sit there because it's not schach. It's some other, material. It's not kosher. It's invalid material for schach. It didn't grow from the ground like we learned, and it should be something that cannot be accept contamination. You can't sit on. He's talking about the overhead. The ceiling, when you walk in, the ceiling for the sukkah, meaning let's say you're going to take your lulav and etrog. Some people say the bracha on the lulav in the sukkah, right? Correct, Mr. Haver? Some people do that. You can't, don't just walk into the area and just make the bracha right there. Look up, because you might be, because right when you open the door, in the main door, not the side, right when you open the door, you have to see which, you're under a glass overhead.
Yeah, so where they expanded the sides to the ends of the wall.
Right, but we're talking about upstairs here is an issue, it's a problem. Right, meaning it's not, right when you walk in, what do I mean by problem? The word problem is it means to say you can't, that's not a sukkah. Right when even though you're outside, it's not a sukkah the first few feet, the first 6 feet. Again, just look up. Main thing is just make sure, look upstairs, look up. What do I have on top of me? If I have a glass overhead, no good. If I have some bamboo sticks, then you're doing we're doing good. Okay. So what we were discussing about this movement of the walls. The Gemara has the following, was challenging him on 25, we're on 25a. Tashma, come in here, the following case. This following case is going to try to challenge, and you're going to see that every time the Gemara challenges law, the Gemara responds to defend the position, and that will become the halacha, that following this position, that if the wall has a certain amount of movement, which needs to be defined, if it's swaying a certain amount, it would be invalid. It's not called a wall. Something that's moving, and if it's not called a wall, you're missing a wall on the sukkah. So that canvas wall that's swaying like that, comes a wind and it sways like that. That's not called a wall. So make believe you're missing a wall on that side. So therefore, you have to be careful to give the instructions that people have to tie it down very well. So where is the challenge? Tashma. So in the art scroll, we are on 25a, 1, right before the words Mishnah. Tashma. Come in here. Shavat Bitel, if a person went ahead and he rested in a pile, in a heap, Shugavoa Asar Tvachim. Probably they have some nice picture over here in this Oz V'Hadar. Let's take a look at the picture over here. Let's get 25A. So here we have a nice tail. We have a nice heap. Guy is standing in the pile. He's standing on top of this. This heap. Okay. So Shabbat detail. He went ahead and he before Shabbat. Usually, a person acquires his residence. There's something called Tehumim. You can't leave the city. You can't walk out of a city on Shabbat more than 2,000 amot, even though you're not carrying anything. There are certain limitations in how much a person can walk outside the city limits on Shabbat. Let's say it's about 2,000 amot, that are close to 3/4 of a mile, let's say. So if you have, when the city ends, no more houses, okay, there's certain halachot exactly how much you get, but let's say there's around 2,000 amot, you have up to around 3/4 of a mile that you can walk outside a city, but if it's past that, you can't walk outside the city. Why is that? I think I saw because Shabbat is not supposed to be a day that I'm just spending my day walking. I'm spending the whole day walking. Some people think, I'm not violating the Shabbat, but the same way, but if you're going to be spending your whole day traveling on Shabbat, I'm going to be walking on Shabbat. It would seem that if I would travel such a significant outside the city, then that's not a day of rest. A day of meaning it's connected to the idea of resting. No houses. Let's say the houses stop. There's no more houses. It's open area. Right. Where you have the issue is in the country. Not so much maybe in Deal, you have houses all over Deal. But you have places in the Catskill region. It's open and there's no one built, there's no houses there. So then you have to start counting at a certain spot. You have to start counting, okay, how much can I walk on the Shabbat? New York City is no problem. You want to walk, we have people that walk from, good morning, Shimon. We had people walking from Flatbush to lower Manhattan on Shabbat. Because there's houses, there's residential all around. You want to walk from First Street and First Avenue to 200 and something street in the Bronx. Right. So I would say I think the spirit of is maybe missing a little bit. If a guy goes there, I'm spending my Shabbat, I'm going for a walk from 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's say Shabbat is the time in the summertime. Excuse me, Shabbat could go to 9 o'clock or whatever the time is. I'm going to spend from 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock walking. I'm going to be walking the whole day. You understand? It's not that's not called, there's something called actually doing work, and there's something called you're not really resting on Shabbat. It's like that's the idea that the Aruch HaShulchan says a little bit about muktzeh. That if you'll be able to handle everything on Shabbat, you can handle and move everything around the Shabbat. You're not going to be. It's not called you're resting on Shabbat. Right. Right. That's fine because again, you didn't leave the city. But I'm saying, but you could understand that maybe, but you can understand if a person will spend hours walking on Shabbat, it might not be resting in the real sense on Shabbat, even though technically you didn't do any work, but you weren't. So that could be a little bit of understanding of why you're limited and how far you can walk outside a city. As long as you did not, when the city was over, you did not pass around 3/4 of a mile from the time the city was over. As long as you want to go ahead and you want to go from First Street and First Avenue to walk to the Safra Shul, 63rd, which is a little over 3 miles, you're allowed to do it. The halacha does not say you shouldn't do it. You're 100% allowed to do it. Okay, beautiful. So halacha there you're doing it for a great purpose. Again, and then you're in anyway. You did not leave the city. There are houses all along, so there's no problem. But you can understand a little bit rationale behind this law. So now, on Shabbat, usually your house becomes your place of residence, and you have 2,000 amot from your, let's say, a certain amount, or 3/4 of a mile to travel to walk past your house, but your house is in the city. If your house is in the city, so then you get 2,000 amot from the end of that city. But here we're talking about a person is not when the Shabbat began, he wasn't in his house, he wasn't in the city, he was in this outdoors area. So now we're talking about, that's what our Gemara is talking about. Shavat Tashmat, Shavat Betel. Right, you have it 25A1. He rested in a tail. There was this mound, as we saw in the picture, and this mound, it had a height of 10 tfachim. And we said since it had a height of 10 tfachim, which is about 30 to 40 inches, that's a few feet. We have a law that says that the walls, halachically, we could look at the sides as if they go up. as if they enclose this person. So therefore, it's like he's enclosed on all sides of this mound, as if they go up, and he is enclosed, he's in an enclosed area. That makes his, now, so what do we say about that? His residence, right. So now, when Shabbat came, when the sun went down, this is where he was hanging out. He was on top of this, he got stuck in his travels, and this is where he was. He didn't make it back on time for Shabbat to the city. He's on top of this mound. So, Vuhu me'arba amod ad beis Asayim. And this area of this, how large is this mound? It's between 4 amot, it's between 7 feet, and beis Asayim. Beis Asayim is an area that you could plant 2 Succah, which is we had that earlier, which is about 5,000 amot. 5,000 amot would be about close to 10,000, but between 7,500 and 10,000 feet. So he has this area is, and we said yes last time that we learned that on Shabbat, if you're in a residential area, right, you want to make the most biggest, building with the most biggest hallway. As long as it's a place that's made for residential area, you could carry as big. It doesn't make a difference how you're in a private building. You could carry as big as the building is, as big as if it's made for residential area. But let's say you enclosed an area not for living, but for some other non-living purposes. So then we said there's a certain amount of, if it's larger than 5,000 square amot, then you would be limited. You would not be able to carry in such a place. A place that was the size of the courtyard of the Mishkan, was 5,000 square amot. So if it's larger than that, and it wasn't made for the purpose of living, you cannot carry in that area. So this area that we're dealing with does not have that issue. Good morning. It's not larger than this 5,000 amot, larger than 7,500 to 10,000 feet. So he got this. He came there before Shabbat. He came to this heap that he was standing on. So he acquired his residence over there. Let's say that before Shabbat, when Shabbat came, he found himself in a cleft that is 10 tefachim deep. Do you see this hole in the ground? He has walls. He's within an area that's surrounded by walls. And similarly, it's not larger than this than 10,000 feet. Let's say you had a wheat field, and you cut down the wheat, you created an empty space in the middle of the field, but you have all these stalks that are surrounding you. Then you have and you have all these stalks surrounding. So now the question is, on Shabbat, can he walk? What's his allowance on Shabbat regarding walking? How far can he walk on Shabbat? So what does it say? He could walk throughout this area. It's easy the picture of the guy who's in the middle of the field. He's in the middle of the field, and he's surrounded by the stalks. The stalks are, let's say 10 feet high. The stalks are, let's say, between 30 and 40 inches high. Because they're 30 and 40 inches high, the stalks serve as a wall. And each stalk is next to each other within let's say 3 tefachim of each other. Or you could just say there's more, the closing is more than the opening. Yeah, or let's say that within 3 tvachim, it's as if you have a wall, you're surrounded, this guy is surrounded by a wall, whether you're in the cleft, you're in that hole over there, you're by the, or you're surrounded by walls. So you're surrounded by walls. Now those walls are not, that wasn't made for residential area. No one lives in this in middle of a field, middle of a cleft. No one lives there. So therefore you had what? They're an open space, but now the open space has been sealed. Meaning you're an open space that has some sort of walls, such as halachic walls, that because we said you have these because these things that are surrounding you are 30 to 40 inches high. Right? You're in a box and you're inside the box, you're in the cleft and you have these sides. So now, because you're enclosed, you have and it's not larger than 5,000 square feet, you could walk on Shabbat throughout that enclosure. And it's like your house in that sense. And you get 2,000 amot outside of that. You can walk around 3/4 of a mile on Shabbat. That's called your city. This is like your own city limits. This is your place of residence. And now you got about 3/4 of a mile to walk. That enclosure allows you to carry within that space. Technically, you're allowed to carry within that space. You can't carry outside that space because you're surrounded by walls. And you have walls and you have a width, so you're good to carry within that space. You can't carry outside that space, and not only you can't carry outside that space, you can walk outside that space up to 3/4 of a mile around. 2,000 amot you can walk because this is your place of residence. It's enclosed, but right. So because you're enclosed by the stalks. The stalks became your walls. So outside those walls you can't carry on Shabbat because within the stalks you could carry. Not only could you carry, you could. Right, you could, but you could walk if you cut out, you cleared an area within the field. So that area you cleared in the field, which is surrounded by all these stalks that you did not clear, you could walk on. You could carry within that area on Shabbat because of the stalks surrounding you. That means you're enclosed. But how far could you walk outside that area? You could walk if you walk outside the area, you could walk up to 2,000 amot. You could walk up to around 3/4 of a mile. So now our purpose is the Gemara says, Afal gav the ka'azil v'asi. These stalks have a lot of movement in the stalk. So we see from the Gemara's question that now the question, this would be a good thing to think about. How much movement is there in a stalk? On a regular wind. Because that would define an amount that the rabbi would say is no good. Meaning the Gemara is challenging the rabbi that said that there's movement in the walls is no good. The Gemara is challenging that rabbi. Who was that? That was Rav Acha from this story of the stalks. The stalks move. And even though the stalks move, we say you're good. We don't say it's not a wall. We say you could carry within this area. We say that this area is considered privatized. It's considered. The fact that you can even walk throughout. You can walk throughout this area. You only start your 2,000 amot outside this area. That means this area is we considered enclosed. You are surrounded by walls. But how are you surrounded by walls if there's movement in those stalks? Yes. Right. It's less than 5,000. Right. But the question is how can you? There's movement? The stalks move back and forth, Mr. Haber, and that's the Gemara's challenge. Now, so I'm saying we need I think if we could figure out how much a stalk moves in a regular wind, that would be able to figure out what's the size, the halachic. I understand. But I'm saying because the rabbi said if there's movement in the wall, so this would show you how much that if there's the amount of movement that's in the stalk, that's the problem. To me, the question is how much does a stalk move 9 inches? Maybe a stalk moves 3 inches, 4 inches. So that's why we should be careful when we make a sukkah for sure. That at least that would be a problem. What? How strong? Right, but even that, right? Right, but even that for sure is a problem. The question is, what about even if it's less than the movement of a stalk? We know for sure if you reach the movement of a stalk in a normal wind, that's not a good wall. If any of these canvas sukkahs, any of these flaps, if they move amount that would move on a stalk would move with a regular wind, that's for sure no good. Could be even more than that. Even less movement would be a problem than a stalk. So the Gemara answers, Chatam Nami the Avile B'Hutzah. You know what the story was? That which we said that is considered a good enclosure is that he tied down the stalks. He tied down the stalks that are surrounding it. That he made it in a way that they're not going to move. Since he made it in a way, he tied it down, then it's not a problem. You secured it. So when you secure it, it's not a problem. So that's what the Gemara says to get out of that issue. He secured it. What do you say? How do you see right? But you could you have to you create some sort of, maybe you go from the bottom of the stalk or from the size of the stalk. You put some sort of, like you say, string. Right. You have. Listen, we have to be a little engineer. How to tie it down? But they tied it down in a way that would be there won't be movement in the stalk, or they tied it down with enough that whatever movement it would be so insignificant that it wouldn't be a problem. Tomorrow we're gonna start the next mission tomorrow. Very fascinating mission, because the next mission talks about people who are traveling. You're traveling on a mission for a mitzvah, and it's the holiday of Sukkot. Do you have to go ahead and what's your responsibility regarding a Sukkah when you're traveling? That will be a little bit tomorrow's focus. So we'll get to that tomorrow. I'm gonna apologize that I have to get to the other minyan tomorrow. I'm gonna stay here, so I'm not gonna have to run out to make that other minyan. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Thank you all.